Hey everybody, welcome back to The Wealthy Sailor. So, quick question. What happens when you're 22 years old, you just joined the military, you want to get married to your high school sweetheart, and you have no money? I will tell you right after you hit the like button below. So, let me tell you about the story of probably the biggest single financial mistake I've made in my entire life when it comes to both amount of money I lost, the reason I lost it, and the amount of stress it caused me. So, when I was 22 years old, I just joined the Navy, I finished up boot camp, and then I got to A school. When I got to A school, towards the end of it, you get to pick orders on where you go now. Now, I was from Philadelphia, so I wanted somewhere on the East Coast. So they decided to give me West Coast orders from based near Seattle on a ship. So I was dating a girl at the time, and this was like we were like dating for about 3 years. So I called her up immediately. I'm like, well, I know you're in college and everything, but I'm about to go to Seattle. So we talked for a minute, and we were both concerned what we'd do, and we're like, well, let's get married. You can move out to Seattle. So kind of on a whim, we decided to get married. So what's the first thing you do when you decide to get married? Propose? No, not in our case. We had to start figuring out how we're going to pay for this. Now, I wanted to do something small. A courthouse wedding is very common in the military. You just go there, you pay the $50, you say I do, and you're married. We talked about that, and we talked about the possibility of doing something more ceremonial down the road. She decided this is not a good idea, probably for a good reason. One of her concerns was that we'll never go back and actually have a formal wedding. And I have to admit, it's kind of hard to disagree with this logic, even knowing everything I know now, because very few people I know who make that promise to do that have actually gone through and followed through on it. Most of them just simply don't. They use their money for other things. Even if they save, it's usually for other stuff. So we decided to get married, and while most people would think the first step of that is to propose, I was in Pensacola and she was in Philadelphia. So proposing was kind of put on hold for now. But we started to move through with the plans for the wedding because we had all of 2 months to figure this out. It was June, and literally we're getting married in August, in the middle of August. So we didn't have a lot of time. So we started discussing what we wanted. She wanted a big wedding, and I wanted a small wedding, so we compromised, and we had a very big wedding with 150 guests. So after some finagling, and she actually did a pretty good job saving money. Her and her mom actually did the invitations, and we had her uncle help us set up for the outdoor ceremony and stuff. But anyway, the total bill was $15,000. So how am I going to get $15,000? I'm a 22-year-old who just joined the military, and I have no money. So how do I get $15,000 exactly? So I call up my bank, and I say I want a loan for $15,000. So she's like, okay. She does some stuff. She's like, well, we'll approve you for a line of credit for $15,000. I'm like, awesome, cool. That's like a loan, right? She's like, yeah. I'm like, cool. And then a couple days later, I open up my bank account, and I have a new account. I have my checking account, my savings account, and now I have this new line of credit account with $15,000 in it. Terrific. So the way it worked is that I would essentially move money from my line of credit into my checking account, and then I can just use my debit card or write a check or whatever. I did have checks for the line of credit account, but they were being mailed out, so we didn't really have that. So, okay, this is what we had. So anyway, we ended up getting married. Now, the thing I didn't understand about a line of credit is I didn't realize that it's more like a credit card than a loan. When I got it, I thought it was a loan. So I remember when we first, I think I had like 3 months where I didn't have to make any payments on whatsoever. I'm like, great. So we're already married by the time I have to make my first payment on this. And of course, there's nothing in the account. So I call up and I'm like, hey, how much do I have to pay? Because there's no minimum balance on this thing, or there's no monthly payment. And she's like, well, it's a line of credit. That's not really how it works. And, you know, she probably explained to me very specifically how it works, but I was too dumb at the time to understand it. So I just found out how much the payment was for that month. So I paid that. But I noticed that I'm like, oh, cool, I can take the money back out of this account. So fast forward 2 years, and we still owe $15,000 on this account. We are paying the minimum payments, which is just covering the interest, which means that the $15,000, none of the principal is returned. We're just making minimum monthly payments. It's like paying the interest off on a maxed out $15,000 credit card. But again, I didn't know that. We just kept running in the money stuff, and we just kept taking the money back out. Every time we caught ahead, we took it back out. So in the end, this $15,000 loan cost me $32,000 because for years I was just paying the interest. And then once I figured out what it was, I still didn't pay it off instantly because I didn't have $15,000. It still took me several years to catch up and actually pay that off. So for that whole time, I had a $15,000 revolving credit balance on that account because I didn't know. I didn't understand that they don't care if you pay off the principal. They don't care if you ever pay off the principal as long as you're making those monthly payments on the interest. And that's why the payments got so high, or why I paid so much, because I was just paying interest every month. And when we would pay more, I would just take it out if we ran any more money problems. So we weren't catching up on it at all. But it also wasn't hurting us directly, or at least at the time, I couldn't tell that it was. I wasn't checking my credit score regularly because Credit Karma was not a thing. I wasn't applying for a lot of credit, so I didn't really need it. You know, I lived on base housing, so you don't need a good credit score for that. I literally did not need to worry about anything with this whole thing. I didn't know anything. Even when I pulled my credit reports from annualcreditreport.com, it doesn't give you a credit score. It just says you have this thing, but it's all paid off, so you're good. And I didn't know really how it was. So fast forward years later, I am 27 and I'm deployed and I'm going through the divorce. So I'm like, well, I'm deployed, making good money. Let me pay off this line of credit. And I did. It took me about 7 months of deployed pay with paying off other stuff. I didn't just pay off that one thing. I paid off several other things, but 7 months of deployed pay got me all caught up with that one thing. And we finally closed it. But ironically, I didn't actually pay it off until literally 2 or 3 months before my divorce was finalized. So my takeaway from this, one, if you're young and getting married, don't do your wedding on credit if at all possible. Like, I would almost suggest working 2 jobs and not getting married for a year or 2 until you have the money saved up than doing anything on credit. Simply speaking, it's just, I don't think it's a good investment. And this is my personal opinion about it. This is just my opinion based on my experience. So, you know, obviously every story is different. Everybody has different stuff going on. But I told you before that I think the difference between gambling and investing is the success rate. And with 50% of all marriages, you know, ending in divorce, I don't know if that's a great thing to invest in. I know everybody wants to believe in the true love thing, and I'm not trying to sound like that jaded guy. I'm just saying do it smartly. Like, now I am planning a wedding with my current fiance. We've been together for 6 years now, maybe 7. I'm not sure, so because of that, I hope she doesn't watch this video because I feel like I should know that. Anyway, I've been with my current fiance for 6 years, and we're together saving for the wedding. And I know when you're young, it's hard and you want to get married and stuff, but I really do think that's better for younger people to save and together budget in order to pay for the wedding. And I think this works out in another way too, because that forces young couples to have conversations they might not be comfortable having otherwise. You know, you're forced to know each other's financial information, or at least discuss it. You're forced to budget. You're forced to have these open dialogues about money that people might not otherwise have. With my failed marriage, it wasn't a money dialogue thing. We were always very open about money and stuff. It was just that we didn't have enough of it for what we wanted. What we should have done is waited to get married just a year and saved money. And then additionally, we should have had a wedding that we could have afforded. We should have narrowed down the amount of people going in there. We should have cut back on the food and the open bar. Now, we did make a lot of sacrifices. For instance, we didn't even have any music when she walked down the aisle, which was more of an oversight than a calculated decision. She did really well picking out a dress that was like, I think it was like a season older, and I guess that knocks a lot of money off of a dress. So we did a lot of that, but we still shouldn't have had as many people as we did. It was a nice wedding, don't get me wrong. It's just that we were young and we were stupid and we just didn't plan it out well. So there you go. My stupidest financial decision was taking out a $15,000 line of credit to get married. and then end up paying over $30,000 when everything was said and done to finally pay it off. And the mistake wasn't the wedding itself. It was taking out a line of credit to get married and then not fully understanding the financial package that I had purchased and not understanding how to pay it back, how the fees work, how the interest worked. I mean, just thinking back on it, the interest was like 17% on it. It was like outrageous. It's something that, knowing now, I would never have done. If anything, now I would take out a personal loan for like 5%, 6% interest. But again, I wouldn't do it at all. But if I had to, that's what I would do. But I hope my story resonates with some of you about different ways of spending your money and whether or not what you want is worth paying the inflated price if you have to get a financial package in order to pay for it. For example, if you're trying to use your credit card to buy something, is it really worth the inflated price by using your credit card in order to get that? And this is a personal decision. I just want to share my dumbest thing that I've ever done. Thank you for watching. Please take my words to heart and keep saving.